Ransomware attacks. They're a growing threat, and it's not just big corporations that need to worry anymore.
No, that's right.
In this deep dive, we're looking at a Canadian housing company that learned the hard way that their sensitive resident data was at risk.
What's often overlooked is that the housing sector holds a lot of personal and financial information.
Yeah.
They have residents' personal details, financial records, lease agreements, all that stuff. It makes them prime targets for these kind of attacks.
Yeah, it's like a gold mine for hackers.
Yeah.
And the source material even points this out directly,
Yeah.
saying, as a housing association, the company retained residents' personnel information and financial information, which made them a potential target for cyber attacks. So they realized that their old backup systems just weren't going to cut it against modern ransomware threats.
Right. A lot of organizations, especially in sectors like housing, they rely on legacy systems that weren't designed with today's threats in mind. They might offer some protection, but they just can't keep up with how sophisticated these ransomware attacks have become.
So they needed a better way to protect their data, and that's where Veeam Cloud Connect and Azure come in.
Yeah.
And what's interesting here is this housing company actually looked at a few different options before deciding on this combination.
Right. They looked at on-premises solutions, but those just didn't offer the scalability and the off-site protection that they really needed. And they considered other cloud providers. But Azure offered the best integration with Veeam and had some really strong security features like immutable storage. And cost was a big factor.
Yeah.
Their IT manager, William, actually said, with StoneFly, not only we got Veeam Cloud Connect, but also a secure encrypted tunnel for data transfers and an immutable target storage for our backups in Azure, all within our budget.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It shows that you don't have to break the bank to get really solid data protection.
Yeah.
So let's dig into this solution a little bit. First, we've got Veeam Cloud Connect, which is all about automating those backups and replications.
Right. And that automation is key to minimizing human error, which is something that William also emphasized. He said, we wanted to automate backup and recovery as much as we could because we wanted to reduce the possibility of human error while also efficiently minimizing dedicated data protection resources, both monetary and human.
Yeah, it makes sense. The less manual intervention, the fewer opportunities for mistakes. But what does this automation actually look like in practice?
So with Veeam, the housing company could actually customize their recovery point objectives and recovery time objectives.
Okay.
Or RPOs and RTOs for short.
Got it.
Basically, they could decide how often those backups happen and how quickly they could get their data back if there was an attack. It's all about tailoring the protection to their specific needs.
So it's like setting an alarm. You decide how often and when you need that reminder, and Veeam takes care of the rest.
Exactly.
Okay, so Veeam handles the backup and recovery side of things. But how do they make sure that those backups themselves are protected from ransomware?
Well, that's where StoneFly Management Server comes in. It basically acts as a secure bridge between their systems and the Azure cloud.
Okay, let's unpack that a little bit. What makes this bridge so secure?
So imagine your data is traveling through a tunnel on its way to the Azure Cloud StoneFly Management Server, creates that tunnel, and encrypts everything inside. So even if someone tries to peek in, all they see is gibberish. This is what we call encryption in transit.
Okay.
And once the data reaches Azure, it's also encrypted at rest, meaning it's protected even while it's just sitting there being stored.
So it's like having a double-locked vault for your data.
Exactly. It makes sure that even if hackers get through those initial security layers, they can't actually get to those backup copies.
So it's not just about backing up the data. It's about making sure those backups are untouchable.
Right. It's a layered approach that minimizes the attack surface.
So let's talk about Azure itself. What makes it such a good choice for storing these backups?
Well, Azure has a lot of advantages for data protection. It integrates really smoothly with Veeam, which makes the whole process super efficient. Plus, it's scalable, meaning the housing company can easily adjust their storage needs as they grow. But the real game changer is the immutable storage feature.
Okay, immutable storage.
Yeah, it sounds a little sci-fi. I know.
It does.
But it's actually pretty straightforward. Think of it like a historical record.
Okay.
Once it's written, it can't be changed or erased. Immutable storage works the same way. Once data is written to this type of storage, it can't be modified or deleted, even by administrators.
So even if someone with bad intentions got into the system, they couldn't encrypt or delete those backups.
Exactly. It's like having a tamper-proof vault for your most critical data. Azure does this through features like WORM.
Wormer.
Yeah, it stands for Write Once, Read Many.
Okay.
And they also use file lockdown and S3 object lock. These features basically make the backups read-only, which makes them incredibly resistant to ransomware attacks.
That's a pretty strong defense mechanism.
Yeah.
But we can't forget about cloud air gapping.
Oh,
That
well.
seems like another important layer of protection.
Oh, absolutely. Cloud air gapping takes that isolation even further. Imagine your main data center is on one island, and your backup data is on another island with no direct connection between them.
So even if hackers manage to get into the main system, those isolated backups are still safe.
Exactly. It's physical and logical separation that adds an extra layer of security, making sure that even if one system is compromised, the backups are still there and ready for recovery.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
But what does it all mean for the housing company in practical terms? How do these solutions actually help them?
Well, the most immediate benefit is peace of mind. Knowing that they have a solid system in place to protect all that sensitive resident data, that's huge.
Hmm.
But beyond that, they also saw a big reduction in their recovery time. Remember those recovery time objectives we talked about?
Yeah.
With Veeam Cloud Connect and Direct Restore to Azure, they can get their systems and data back up and running much faster.
That's crucial, especially when you think about what downtime means.
Mm.
It disrupts operations, it inconveniences residents, and it can even hurt the company's reputation.
And let's not forget about efficiency. Automating the backup and recovery processes freed up their IT team so they could focus on other important things. It's a win-win. Enhanced security, improved efficiency, and less risk, all while staying within budget.
This whole case study is really insightful. It shows that even organizations with limited resources can implement some pretty powerful ransomware protection strategies.
And what's really inspiring is that they didn't wait for a disaster to happen. They took the initiative to protect their data and their residents.
So they were ahead of the curve. What are the key takeaways from this deep dive? What should our listeners keep in mind?
Well, first off, understand that ransomware is a threat to everyone. It doesn't matter how big your organization is or what industry you're in, don't assume you're immune.
Complacency is dangerous.
Exactly. And second, don't rely on just your old backup systems. You need to look at what you have now and consider a layered approach like we've been talking about.
So a combination of strong backup solutions, cloud storage with those immutable features, and cloud air gapping.
Exactly. Those layers work together to give you a really comprehensive defense against ransomware.
And of course, we can't forget about the human element. Like William pointed out, automating things can drastically reduce the risk of human error.
Absolutely. Technology alone isn't enough. We need to design systems that minimize the potential for those mistakes.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, but it's clear that protecting data from ransomware requires a proactive and multifaceted approach.
And remember, data security is a journey. It's not a one-time fix. The threats are always changing, so you have to stay informed, stay vigilant, and adapt your defenses as you go.
We've seen how this housing company really took control of their data security. Now it's your turn. What steps can you take to safeguard your own valuable information?
It's time to assess your own data security practices. Are you doing enough to protect yourself from the growing threat of ransomware?
That's a question for all of us to think about. This deep dive has highlighted not only the risks, but the solutions that are out there. By taking those proactive steps and learning from what others have gone through, we can all strengthen our defenses and stay ahead of the curve in the fight against ransomware.
Because in the end, knowledge is power, and in the world of cybersecurity, that power can make all the difference.
Well said. And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into ransomware protection in the housing sector. Thanks for joining us.
And it's like having this double-locked vault for all your data. It ensures that even if those hackers get through your initial security layers, they still can't get to those backup copies.
So it's not even just about backing up the data, it's about making sure those backups themselves are untouchable.
Right. It's all about that layered approach, minimizing that attack surface.
So let's talk about Azure itself. What makes it such a good choice for storing these backups?
Azure has a lot of advantages for data protection. It integrates really well with Veeam, so that makes things run smoothly. Plus, it's scalable, meaning that the housing company could easily adjust their storage as they grow. But the real game changer here is that immutable storage feature.
Okay, immutable storage. What exactly are we talking about here?
Yeah, it sounds a little bit sci-fi, I know, but
Okay.
it's actually pretty simple. Think of it like a historical record. Once it's written, you can't change it. You can't erase it. And immutable storage works the same way. Once the data is written to that type of storage, it can't be changed or deleted, not even by administrators.
So even if someone with bad intentions got into the system, they couldn't encrypt or delete those backups.
Exactly. It's like having this tamper-proof vault for all your critical
What?
data. Azure does this through features like Worm.
Worm.
Yeah, it stands for write once, read many.
Okay.
They also use file lockdown and S3 object lock. All these features, they basically make the backups read-only, which makes them incredibly resistant to ransomware attacks.
That's a pretty serious defense mechanism. What about cloud air gapping? That seems like another important piece of the puzzle.
Absolutely. Cloud air gapping that takes isolation a step further. Imagine that your main data center is on one island, and then your backup data is on a completely separate island with no direct connection between them.
Okay, so even if hackers get into the main system, those isolated backups are safe and sound.
Exactly. It's this physical and logical separation which adds an extra layer of security. It ensures that even if one system gets compromised, the backups are still there, ready to be recovered.
This is all very impressive. But what does this mean for the housing company, practically speaking? How did these solutions translate into real benefits?
Well, the most immediate benefit is peace of mind, knowing they have a really solid system in place to protect all that sensitive resident data that's invaluable.
Yeah, for sure.
Beyond that, they also saw a major reduction in their recovery time. Remember those recovery time objectives we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
With Veeam Cloud Connect and that direct restore to Azure, they can get their systems and their data back up and running so much faster.
Right, and that's critical when you think about downtime and what that really means. It disrupts operations, it inconveniences residents, it can even damage the company's reputation.
For sure. And let's not forget about the efficiency gains. Automating the backup and recovery process, well, that frees up their IT team to focus on other things.
Right.
It's a win-win situation. You've got enhanced security, you have improved efficiency, less risk,
Yes.
and all while staying within budget.
This whole case study is incredibly insightful. It shows that even organizations with limited resources can implement these powerful ransomware protection strategies.
And what's really inspiring is that they didn't just sit around and wait for something bad to happen. They were proactive about protecting their data and their residents.
So they were ahead of the game, so to speak.
Yeah.
What are the key takeaways from all of this? What should our listeners really remember?
First of all, you have to understand that ransomware, it's a threat to everyone. It doesn't matter how big your organization is or what industry you're in. Don't ever assume that you're immune to this stuff.
Complacency can be dangerous.
Exactly. And secondly, don't rely on just your legacy backup systems. You need to take a look at what you're doing right now and consider a layered approach like what we've been discussing here.
Okay, so a combination of strong backup solutions, cloud storage with those immutable features, and cloud air gapping.
Exactly. All those layers, they work together to create this really comprehensive defense against ransomware attacks.
And of course, we can't forget about that human element. Like William pointed out, automating those processes can dramatically reduce the risk of human error.
Oh, absolutely. Technology alone isn't enough. We need to design systems that minimize the chances of those mistakes happening.
We've covered a lot of ground here, but it's clear that protecting data from ransomware requires a very proactive and multifaceted approach.
You got it. And always remember, data security, it's a journey. It's not a one-time thing. The threats, they're always changing, so you have to stay informed, stay vigilant, and be ready to adapt your defenses as you go.
We've seen how this housing company really took control of their data security. Now it's your turn. What can you do to protect your own valuable information?
It's time to assess your own data security practices. Are you doing enough to protect yourself from the growing threat of ransomware?
Yeah, it's really inspiring to see how they took those steps and protected their data and their residents.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a valuable lesson for all of us.
So let's bring it all home.
Yeah.
What are the key takeaways from this deep dive? What should our listeners really remember?
Well, first and foremost, you've got to recognize that ransomware, it's a threat to absolutely everyone. It doesn't matter how big your organization is, what industry you're in. Don't ever think that you're immune to this stuff.
Complacency can be dangerous.
Exactly. And second, don't just rely on those old legacy backup systems. Take a look at what you have in place right now and think about that layered approach we've been talking about.
So a combination of those strong backup solutions, cloud storage with immutable features, and cloud air gapping.
Exactly. Those layers all work together to build this comprehensive defense against these ransomware attacks.
And of course, we can't forget the human element. Like William pointed out, automating those processes can really cut down on the risk of human error.
Absolutely. Technology on its own isn't enough. We need to design systems that minimize the chances of those mistakes happening.
So we've covered a lot here, but it's clear that protecting data from ransomware, it takes a proactive and a multifaceted approach.
Absolutely. And remember, data security, it's a journey. It's not a one-time thing. Those threats are always changing, so you have to stay informed, stay vigilant, and be ready to adapt your defenses as you go.
Right. We've seen how this housing company took control of their data security. Now it's your turn. What steps can you take to protect your information?
It's time to take a look at your own data security practices. Are you doing enough to protect yourself from ransomware?
That's a question for all of us to consider. This deep dive has shown us not only the risks, but also the solutions that are out there. By being proactive and learning from the experiences of others, we can all strengthen our defenses and stay one step ahead in the fight against ransomware.
Because in the end, knowledge is power. And in the world of cybersecurity, that power makes all the difference.
Well said. So that wraps up our deep dive into ransomware protection in the housing sector. Thanks for joining us, and stay vigilant out there.